Well, I'm interested in the cufflinks there. I assume that has to do with the conversation we were just having.
Well, that's part of practice protocol. If you refer to, do you want to be Matt or Matthew?
Matt, please.
Okay. Matt or their CEO Joe, it's cufflinks. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I mean, this is the last time I drove one of my cars with the stick shift to any restaurant.
Okay.
It was no valet knows how to drive a stick shift anymore. And
I didn't think about that.
Interesting.
You always have to ask them, and they almost always look at you and they go, no, sir. And
deer in the headlights.
Just tell me where you want me to put the car.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes me want to teach one of my kids how to learn how to drive
Yeah.
a stick shift, but then I got to find a stick shift to.
Well, their Volkswagen Golf is still available in a stick shift.
it?
It's a great little car, not expensive.
Right.
And, I mean, the best way to make sure that your kid never has to lend their car to another kid is to get them a stick shift.
That's
That's
a good point.
idea. Yeah.
And who's going to steal it? They can't drive it.
Yeah.
It can't be driven.
That's interesting.
It's like a millennial anti-theft device.
They should remarket it no longer as a manual.
That's right, right. Millennial anti-theft device. If you're under the age of 35, you probably, there's a 5% chance you can drive this car.
Yeah.
And only one of us at this table is in that age group.
I can drive a stick shift. So.
Yeah. Oh, you can?
I can.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good for you.
How'd you
You're ahead of the curve.
So learned on one of my dad's cars, but that was not an enjoyable learning experience, driving in a car that he cherished and learning how to drive a stick shift. So I got good enough to where I could get home if something were to happen. But then it annoyed me enough that I didn't know how to do it, so I bought an older BMW and kind of worked on it and learned how to drive stick, then owned a Mini Cooper for a little bit. And then
Mini Coopers.
Now it's like riding a bike. I don't own one. I don't.
Yeah,
but
it comes back to you, though.
It is, yeah.
I got a job at Dan Young Chevrolet when I was 16 years old on the service drive, and I didn't know how to drive a stick, so I had like a week to learn because I didn't want to burn out, in a Corvette in front of the owner. So I was like, I gotta get home, and I gotta let my mom had a little Honda Prelude, and I learned on that real quick.
Right.
So
that's a good car.
I was highly motivated to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so I didn't want to.
You didn't ruin any clutches, right? Not that you're aware of.
No, well, it was flat, right? The clutch ruoning is always on the hill.
True.
Well, he was working at a service center. You were just creating more business.
That's right.
By not knowing how
That's
to drive
right.
stick.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Anyway.
Is this thing on? Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Summits Podcast. Thank you for joining us from wherever you guys get your podcasts, or if you're watching us on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. Don't forget, hit that little subscription button and the little notification bell so you can be alerted when new episodes like this one drop, if you haven't already done so. It's free of charge, so we highly recommend. Today, a good friend of ours, Dr. Matt Priddy from Priority Physicians, is joining us. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Why don't you give our listeners a little intro?
Okay. Well, I am a family medicine doc. Live here in Carmel. And I've been in practice for 20 years now. This is my 20th year.
Nice.
And so this will be my actually 20th year of marriage as well. And I've got a 5-year-old daughter at home. We've got I would consider a fairly successful practice. There's 10 docs in our practice, and we practice a little bit more intense preventative medicine maybe than a lot of places do. So, and it's just because of the way our practice is set up, we've got more time to spend with our patients. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
It's been very intense.
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly right.
One question I wanted to ask you about that is, as that whole industry has evolved, and you've seen it evolve over the last, how long has Priority been around?
20 years.
It's been 20 years. Okay. So you've seen a lot of probably ebbs and flows in that industry over that 20 years. Let me ask you this. What made you decide to go into it and start this concept 20 years ago?
Well, self-preservation, really. I mean, I'd love to say I had some sort of grand plan, but in residency, even then, in our clinics, we would have a half day, and they'd have us seeing 12 people, in 3.5 hours, and very complicated patients, with multiple medical issues. Half of them didn't even speak English, so there's a translator in the room. Okay. And I thought, wow, I don't want to do this for the next 35 years. Right. I mean, I think I'll burn out. And part of it is, just knowing that you're not able to provide the type of care that you could, not because you're not smart, but because you're on a time restraint all the time. And so I just sort of started looking around, and there were a couple practices on the East Coast that had started doing this just a few years before. The first one was in '96, and we opened in 2002, late 2022. But I sort of let it be known that this was something I was looking into, and then my partner Craig Veach was also going to be doing that, and so the two of us got together and started a practice with no patients, which is a great business model. Highly recommend it.
A little risky, but
I was right out of residency, and so I was used to making $30,000 a year, and I'm like, if it doesn't work out, I'm sure somebody will hire me.
Right.
So people you will say, oh gosh, you must have, how ballsy was that? And I'm like, not really. My wife was still in residency, and we were, used to living on nothing. So, it was, nothing ventured, nothing gained sort of thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, things have obviously taken off. I mean, you guys have done well over the last several years. When you look at where's the practice headed, and my crystal ball is not any better than anybody else's, but do you see more location? You guys are up to 2 locations now.
Yeah.
Do you see more locations, or who knows?
I don't know. I mean, we just expanded our Carmel location. We're getting ready to build a building out in Fishers and make that one bigger. I think the biggest question is sort of like, what's the market cap on a service like this? And if you had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have thought maybe, there might be a couple hundred, 400 people, enough for Craig and I to take care of, and that would be about it. Mm-hmm. And, I'd like to think a lot of it is us sort of raising the bar on providing primary care. I think at the same time, the bar is being lowered around us, and some of that is older doctors retiring, having had enough of after COVID. Some of that is just...
I just heard a recent story, like literally earlier this week, of that exact scenario.
They've just had it. Meanwhile, the population is getting older. More and more people are moving to the Indianapolis, metro area. There's not enough primary care doctors. And so, if for patients who value the ability to get in at a reasonable amount of time and actually talk to their doctor, like there are other options, but we sort of hold ourselves out as essentially the pinnacle of what it could be if you did everything to focus on what the patient would want.
Sure.
Yeah. So, we'll probably have some more offices around here. We've had some offers to help other people in other cities, and I don't know if we're going to do that or not, but I don't see, Joe. I don't see Joe and I like saying, well, we're in our late 40s, we're done, we're shutting it down. We're not going to get any bigger, and we're just going to ride off into the sunset for the next 20 years. Probably not.
Yeah. Right. You're builders.
Yeah, it's fun. What would we do if we weren't growing the practice? So,
right.
Yeah.
Maybe go out and play with cars and do stupid stuff.
Yeah. We have a good time too, but it is sort of. I think a lot of physicians, doctors are the smartest people in the room always, right? So all doctors think that they're good.
We can edit that part out, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's why like the number one cause of small airplane crashes are physician pilots, because they're if you're a neurosurgeon, you must be an awesome pilot too, right?
You have to be.
But you're just not, Also, you have to get back for surgery on Monday, so it doesn't matter. It's raining, you're flying. I wouldn't hold ourselves out as being the smartest business people, but we have a lot of experience in over 20 years that we've sort of learn the hard way what does and doesn't work with this business model. So it's been fun. It's been interesting, and it's been interesting talking to folks around the country and learning what they're doing and sort of taking snippets of, hey, this guy's doing this really great, bringing it back and integrating into our practice.
Yeah. Well, as a patient, and hopefully I'm not breaking any laws by admitting
No,
myself,
you can say it. I can't say it. Yeah.
The things that I value are some of the annualized stuff that you do, because, let's face it, it's up to the person typically to initiate, okay, I need to get my annual physical, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. The fact that that's just part of your guys' normal annual protocol, I don't want to say forces it, but in a way it does. It serves as a hell of a reminder.
Right.
And, as many of our listeners know, or followers of the Heroes Foundation, know my story. And so I think because of that, fortunately, we were able to catch some things early, and which is a good thing, of course, in the cancer world or any other healthcare related issue. Yeah. And can hopefully address it ahead of the game, and it's going to have a more successful outcome. So that's one of the things that drove me to you guys. It's one of the things that keeps me there, and I appreciate just the fact that it's not so much the service level, which is obviously very high, but just that those annualized things that otherwise I don't know if I'd be getting done.
Well, getting one's prostate checked is usually not, high up on somebody's list of fun things to do on a Thursday, right? Or getting your colonoscopy, and we've got great nurses who work for us, and literally will just bug the crap out of people until they acquiesce and they give me a date. I need a date. You're a year past due, and there's something. We've had folks that 2 years later, they're like, fine, just stop calling. I'll get it if you'll stop calling me,
Persistence.
Right. And so, some of those things, like you said earlier, I don't care what it is. If you catch heart disease, diabetes early, cancer early, it's always better than catching it late, because there's so much we can do ahead of the game to affect change in many cases. Even with cancer, a stage 1 cancer is generally treatable with surgery. Yeah. Stage 4 never is, and so how early you catch a cancer, or how early you identify somebody who's gonna be a diabetic in 4 years if they don't lose weight, or going to have a heart attack in whether it's 6 months or in 5 years, right there, heart disease, diabetes, and heart disease, cancer, and vascular disease, stroke, top 3 killers of America.
Right.
And a lot of people, if you don't have prevention as part of your yearly routine, you find out about the heart disease when you drop dead of a heart attack, which is a dumb way to find out that you have heart disease.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. If you were going to give someone, you and I are about the same age, if not the same age. You're obviously quite a bit younger. You're going to give a piece of advice to someone in our age group, that whether they're a priority patient or not, what is the singular biggest piece of advice that you would give to someone our age?
Okay. Have a doctor.
Yeah.
And even if you only see them for 10 minutes a year, go in and get your labs tested. Mm-hmm. Because so get your labs tested by somebody once a year. From a cardiovascular standpoint, if you haven't had a heart scan and you don't get one regularly, I would say that everyone should get one of those. Yeah. That's the single easiest and cheapest. They're like $50 way of determining, stratifying your risk for cardiovascular disease. If you're 48 years old and you've got a 0 heart scan, that's what I would expect to see, and that's great. Doesn't mean you couldn't have cardiovascular disease. But if you've got a big honkin' calcium score, then your goalposts for your labs just got moved big time, and you probably need a cardiologist. or a primary care doc, who is really into prevention.
Yeah. I know we did a heart scan. How often those aren't done annually? How often are those typically done?
I mean, so there, and that's something that's changed for us in the last 5 years. We used to do heart scans about every 3 years on everybody, starting at 40 for higher risk people, 45 to 50 for lower risk patients. And now the technology has shifted from coronary calcium scoring over into coronary CT angiography. Okay, and the difference there, a heart scan gives you a score, which is quite literally cubic millimeters of calcified old hard plaque in your heart arteries, which is important to know. But that score just puts you on a basically a graph and says, hey, Vince, you're at the 50th percentile for guys your age. What it doesn't do is tell us, hey, you have a X percent blockage. If you do, where is it? Right. And probably most importantly, if you have a blockage, is it all old hard plaque and it's just a little narrowed? Or is the process ongoing? Yeah, because I've seen guys our age that have a calcium score of 15, which is really low. And then you get a coronary CT angiogram on them, and the reason it's low is because most of their plaque is soft, And, quite literally, I mean, if you looked at this stuff on an autopsy, it looks like the fat you'd trim off a chicken. Right. It's the same consistency. It's gooey. And that is the stuff when you hear about some guy or gal who's out jogging or shoveling their driveway and they just drop dead. It's not the old hard stuff that does that. It's the soft stuff breaking up, almost like blowing up like a zit into the inside of your artery, and you go from being 20% blocked to 100% blocked in 30 seconds, and you're toast. Yeah. And so it's super important to know that. Yeah. And so we use the heart scan as sort of an entree, and if it's zero, then maybe every 3-4 years we'll repeat the heart scan. It's easy, it's quick, very low dose radiation. If it's anything but zero now, those patients buy themselves a coronary CT angiogram, at least one. Okay. And if we find out that it's from partying hard when they were 25 and they smoked and they ate like crap, but now they've changed all that and they've just got a little bit of old calcified plaque and that's it, then again, I might not rescan them for 5, 6, 7 years because I don't care. That's never going to be a problem. Yeah. Okay. But I've had patients where it looks terrible and we full court press them on their cholesterol and their blood sugar and their blood pressure, and I bring them back in 18 months and repeat their coronary CT angiogram because they've got like a 60% narrowing and it's soft plaque, and like if that thing goes to 70, they need a stent.
Right. Okay.
Okay. You mentioned technology. I know you're an Apple guy. What are your thoughts on like the Apple Watch playing into some of that, and how do you, at Priority Physicians, do you pull any of that data in or use it at all?
Well, we do. You do have to be careful with sort of data overload. Yeah. I have a lot of friends who practice in California, and whenever I'm out there at conferences, everybody wants to sell you like something that aggregates all this data, and I'm like, look, let me tell you, the last thing I want to do is get up in the morning and look at a computer screen that shows how every single one of my patients slept last night. I don't want to know. Like if you can have it send me like the one guy who hasn't slept in 3 days, and I can call him.
Great.
The Apple Watch is really interesting. I mean, we have absolutely caught, not so much from a blockage standpoint, but from a cardiac rhythm standpoint, it is getting really good at telling people, hey, Apple Watch says, I think I'm in atrial fibrillation, and many times it's right.
Really?
So, that's been I think it's fantastic. Yeah. To have a wearable say, hey, you know what, you should go see your doctor because this is abnormal, or just so you know, in the middle of the night last night, your resting heart rate went up to 140, which is not normal. And this turns out this patient is going into atrial fibrillation. So, in AFib, especially in patients, some people feel terrible in it, but some people don't know. And those people who don't know are the people that when they go into abnormal rhythm, the top part of their heart stops beating. It just quivers instead. They form a blood clot in there. It goes back into rhythm and it shoots that blood clot out. And if you're unlucky, it goes to your lungs and you get a pulmonary embolus, or it goes to your brain and you have a stroke. And oftentimes in the past, we would find out that somebody has atrial fibrillation when they have a stroke. If they are somebody that doesn't feel bad when they're in AFib.
Right.
So I mean, I think the wearables are great for that. That population, obviously there's not a lot of 20-year-olds with atrial fibrillation, but man, I've 40, 50, 60-year-olds definitely had their Apple Watches diagnose that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Neat stuff.
So what you're saying is I need to get an Apple Watch.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I just keep trying to change his bubbles from green to blue for me, and so I just need another point in that corner. So thank you, thank you.
You got it. You got it. Happy to.
Well, Matt, our podcast and the Heroes is all about cancer. What's your cancer story?
So it's not a great one. So when I was when I was 25, my brother, who was 2 years younger than me, I was in my 4th year of medical school, and he was in his 2nd year of medical school. We lived together in Broad Ripple, and he started having abdominal pain, which is weird. He was a very healthy guy, eventually it got bad enough. He went into the emergency room and they did a CT scan on him, and basically his liver just lit up with a bunch of what they didn't know what it was, but it didn't look good. And it after they did a surgery, essentially an exploratory surgery, it was a T-cell lymphoma. So he fought that for about a year, got an autologous bone marrow transplant, and did okay for a little while, and then just got worse and died about a year after his initial diagnosis, during my intern year of training. So that is something that was formative for me. It literally happened my first year of being an quote real doctor, if you will. It's never great when somebody gets cancer, obviously, but when you have somebody in their early 20s get cancer and die that quickly, it seems especially tragic. Somebody just getting ready to be a physician himself, and he would have been a great doc, and he was a great guy. And it still makes me sad. It still pisses me off. I think that one of my passions for finding things early, finding cancers early, is that we just know we can do so much more for somebody when we find it before their abdomen is chock full of mets. Okay. Now in a blood cancer, it's different. I'm happy to say that the cure rates for the type of cancer that he had are drastically different today than they were 20 years ago, thanks to LLS and other cancer research organizations that have just massively changed the survival rates for blood cancers, through gene therapy and other much more effective ways of treating patients, short of the old way, which was nuke them with chemotherapy and then give them a bone marrow transplant. That was their options 1, 2, and 3 20 years ago, and that's what they did. And if the bone marrow transplant doesn't work, or in his case where he had an autologous transplant, it just didn't kill the cancer. The cancer just came right back. So,
we're sorry to hear that. I knew of the story and knew certainly it was close to you, but had not actually heard the story. So thank you for sharing that. We talked about prevention, and we know that there's a lot of things that can go into minimizing your risk. Obviously, we'll never take it to zero because your brother's a great example. I'd like to think I was somewhat similar example where it just happened.
Right, just bad luck.
Bad luck is a great way of putting it. But there's a lot of outside of the obvious, which are take care of yourself by being physically fit, working out, watching what you eat, things like that. There are new testing out today, and I know we want to talk about the blood testing that you were talking about earlier.
So, I mean, this is sort of in my mind, the biggest change in cancer screening that has come along, well, certainly in my career, and maybe not, this is not a hyperbole, maybe ever, from a cancer screening standpoint. So, when we look at cancer screening that is recommended right now, through the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, it's all single cancer screening. We screen for the most common cancers that people get. In men, the most common are lung, colon, skin, and prostate. Okay. And in women, you take out prostate and you replace that with breast cancer, and those are the top 4 for women. Okay. And we have pretty decent screening tests for those things. But the problem is that even if you were up to date on all of those screenings as a man or a woman, you're still only going to catch about 30% of the cancers that affect men and women with those screening tests. Yeah. And the other 50 cancers that are out there, common cancers that people get, when I say common, they're not individually common. They might only be 1% or 2% of the cancers, but when you aggregate them, it's like 70% of the cancers that people get. We don't have a single screening test for. Okay. And you're thinking about your pancreatic cancers or your ovarian cancers or stomach cancer, tonsillar cancer, right. Brain cancer, like the cancers that you hear about somebody getting and then 6 months later they're gone. Yeah. And the reason for that is when you don't have a screening test for something, then you tend to catch those cancers when it's in stage 3 in the lymph nodes, or stage 4, it's everywhere.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And then unless you're lucky, and you unlucky, and get a cancer like testicular cancer that we have a good, regimen for, even when it's in stage 4, then there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, you could be Steve Jobs, one of the richest guys in the world, and if you have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, it doesn't matter. Right. So there's a new category of tests. Some people call them liquid biopsy tests. Essentially, it's a blood test. And we've known for a long time that cancer, when it grows, some of those cancer cells die. And when those cancer cells die, they release the insides, the guts of their cells into the bloodstream. Okay. Cancer, even more so than a lot of cells, because it's growing really fast. A lot of times it'll outstrip its blood supply, and some of those, you'll have some necrotic cancer cells in there as well. And so there's a company called Lumina, and they are the biggest manufacturer of gene sequencing devices. And just to give you a little bit of background, when I was in college, they were sequencing the human genome. Okay? Yeah. And they were like 15 years into it, and they're like, we think it's going to take another 5 years. So it's going to be 20 years, I think, something crazy. They spent billions of dollars sequencing one human genome, and now we can do it in a day. And it costs about $1,000. Right. So part of this is a confluence of technology, sort of catching up with, we knew that cancer, shed DNA into the body, but if it takes 20 years and $1 billion to find it, then that was never going to be a good test.
Yeah, it's not viable.
So this company, it's an interesting backstory. They were developing a test to look for fetal anomalies in maternal blood, basically a replacement for the amniocentesis, because it's dangerous to stick a needle in there. Yeah. And so they did, and they were developing this successful test to look for birth defects in the fetus, that the DNA was shed into the mom's blood, and they accidentally found cancer. Okay, not in the fetus, but in 20 of the women that were in the study, they accidentally found cancer. And so they thought, oh gosh, what if we actually tried to find cancer instead of accidentally finding? What would that look like? And so there are things that happen to cells that we know about in cancer, and people have heard about, a mutation, whether that's a point mutation. Some cancers are caused by like part of one chromosome going and attaching itself to a different chromosome. Okay. So that's called a translocation. That can cause cancer. And then there are other things that we know of that are sort of common to all cancers. And those things are mutations in the genes that regulate cell growth. Okay. So when, Vince was the size of a grain of rice, we all were, right?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Right. There are genes that are turned on that make you grow, that make your liver go from, the size of a speck of sand to the size of a football. And then when your liver's done growing, it's supposed to stop, right? So those genes turn off. Those oncogenes is what we call them. They're called oncogenes because they were first found in cancer, but they're not cancer genes per se. They're just genes that regulate the growth of cells in the body. And we know that in cancer, a lot of those genes that are supposed to be turned off get turned back on again. Okay. And so that's something called epigenetics, where it's not so much there's a mutation. There is, but it's not in the actual gene itself. It's in the part of the DNA that turns the gene on or off. Okay. So there's something called a methylation pattern that you can look at on a piece of DNA that just tells you, hey, which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And cancer tends to have a common methylation pattern, especially bad cancers that grow really aggressively. All those genes are turned back on, and it's a bad thing, right? Because they just grow like weeds. Right. And so this company has been able to take a blood test, look for these, it's called free-floating or cell-free DNA that's not in cells anymore, it's just in your blood. These little snippets, they sequence them, and then they have an AI algorithm look at it and go, hey, does this look like a normal methylation pattern, or is this a cancer methylation pattern? Yeah. Okay. And then the most badass thing about it is, if it does find a cancer methylation pattern, then they go back and they sequence the other genes, and what other genes are turned on. Oh, this came from a pancreas, or this came from your liver, or this came from your brain. And 90% of the time they can pinpoint the tissue of origin for the cancer as well. Wow. So literally a blood test that tells you can find stage 1 cancer and give you a tissue of origin on it.
That's crazy. How long have they been doing this particular blood test to the general public?
It's been out for about 16 months.
Okay. So
wow. So it's
brand new.
Brand new.
Brand new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Freaking awesome.
We just have, I've just had my first batch of patients that have had their second test.
Okay.
It's exciting for a lot of reasons, but and not that it's all about me, but my brother's example, I can't tell you how many patients I have had in 20 years where, like, I had a very memorable patient of mine who wintered in Cortez, Colorado. He left in the fall. He looked great. He came back. He's like, man, I want to come in and see you. It was like March or April. And he said, I'm tired. And man, I could see from the doorway how jaundiced he was. And he had a metastatic cholangiocarcinoma, basically a carcinoma of the bile duct in his liver. Guy had never been in the hospital a day in his life. He was 85 years old, and he was dead within 6 months. You think about it, and you're like, God, if we would have been able to catch that when it was early, before it spread all over his liver and ultimately all throughout his entire body, he might still be alive. There was nothing wrong with the guy. He's on less medicine than I take on a daily basis. I mean, he basically took a baby aspirin. That's it. And he was 85.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so...
I'm thinking of all the pancreatic patients who, you mentioned earlier, typically don't start to have any effects until it's already spread somewhere else. Exactly. And by that point, there's
just
probably
nothing
too late.
you can do about it. Yeah. Pancreatic and ovarian are the two that it's just... you can start to get symptoms depending on like where it is, if you have a tumor in your brain, but man, ovarian cancer, they always come in with a bloated abdomen and mets everywhere. That's how we diagnose ovarian cancer. Because it affects women, younger women, Can affect older women too, but you know, it can affect women in their 40s and 50s. You know, it is something that is absolutely worth finding early. Right. You know, you find a stage 1 ovarian cancer, you take out the ovary, you're done. That's all you got to do. There's no radiation, there's no chemo. That's it. Yeah. Stage 4, there's nothing you can do for it. Yeah. So, I mean, it really, it's not sort of, in my mind, it's a game changer. I mean, there's only a couple reasons to not do it. It's expensive. Okay. It's like $950. Okay. Yeah. So like don't
get me wrong, that's not cheap, but it's not like outrageous. Well, and of course, like most things, I'm sure over time it's going to start coming down.
So that, I mean, the company is doing a prospective study in England right now with 140,000 patients. 70,000 are getting the test every year and 70,000 aren't. And their goal is to prove to the NHS that it's going to save them money. Okay. Right. As soon as that, and it's a 3-year study, as soon as that comes out, now is the FDA or Medicare going to listen? I don't know. But as soon as governments are like, oh my gosh, you know, if we do this on everybody over the age of 50, you know, it's going to save us, you know, $3 billion a year, that'll be the game changer.
Right.
Yeah. Because, you know, yes, the price needs to come down, but what really needs to happen is Medicare needs to start paying for it. And when Medicare starts paying for it, then regular insurance companies will start paying for it, and it will become part of everybody's labs over a certain age. You know, I mean, I want to be clear, this is not a good test for somebody who's 18 years old. Okay. But someday it might be. I mean,
where is that threshold in age and why? I mean,
well, I mean, honestly, here's my analogy. You know, if you went to the mall and you took, you know, had 10,000 guys give you a urine sample, and you dipped them all to see if they're pregnant. Okay, the chances are one of those pregnancy tests is going to come back positive, not because that guy's pregnant, but because there's a baseline error in the test. Okay, and so if you are testing the wrong people for something, then the chance that the test is going to be wrong goes up. Okay. Sure. And so we know that the incidence of cancer goes up as people get older. In fact, it is the #1 risk factor for cancer is getting older. Okay. When you hit 50, your risk of developing cancer is about 1 in 200. Okay, that year when you're 50 years old, and it only goes up as you get older. Okay. Less than 50 it's lower than that. Now that is on average. So to be clear, if you have somebody whose mom had breast cancer when she's 55 and you're BRCA positive, no, you know, maybe you should start getting this when you're 25. Okay. Yeah. We have patients who have something called FAP, which is an inherited mutation that massively increases their risk of colon cancer, and we've been doing it on them, and one of those kids is in their 20s. Okay. And they also, by the way, are getting colonoscopies like every 18 months. Okay. So I want to be clear, this is not a replacement for any of the screening tests that we have. And it's not a perfect test. You know, it has a positive predictive value of 44%, though, which means that it's close to a coin flip. If it says you have cancer, there's about a 50-50 chance that the test is right. Yeah. And for a screening test, that's pretty good. Like mammograms, the positive predictive value is 4%. So 100 abnormal mammograms, only 4 of them are breast cancer, and the other 96 is something else, you know, a benign calcification or nothing or a cyst or something like that. But we still do them because you don't want to miss breast cancer, you know. And so it's not that mammograms are a bad test; it's that it's not a perfect test, and we've all sort of accepted that, you know, it's not a perfect test, and sometimes you got to get a breast biopsy, and sometimes you got to come back and get an ultrasound. It's a pain in the neck, but you don't want to miss breast cancer. So the negative predictive value of the blood test is awesome. It's like 99.5%. Okay. So if it says you don't have cancer, pretty much take to the bank that you don't, you know, and then theoretically you do that every year, and you know you sort of it becomes part of the screening protocol. The other thing that's super cool about the tech and like what's coming down the pipeline is that right now when they do that liquid biopsy and they compare your methylation pattern against sort of a population, the AI looks at, you know, the last 250,000 of these, and you know, and knows these people have cancer and knows these people didn't. In the future, they're going to be able to take that data, and when you have sequential data, your cancer screen over the last 5 years, they're going to be able to compare your methylation pattern to your old methylation pattern.
That's interesting.
So basically, hey, here's Vince's baseline. Hey, something has changed. Right. And if it changes a little, they don't necessarily flag it. But if there's a massive change compared with what they've seen in the past, this is not available yet, but this is what I've heard from talking with the research scientists that are doing the product. They're going to be able to basically, like we do with anything, like a PSA or a cholesterol, say, hey, look, man, here's your last 4 cholesterols. This is terrible compared to where it was last year. We got to change something. Or, hey, your PSA has always been 1 and now it's 4. We gotta look into this because there's a marked change. So that's also, in the works, and, talk about precision medicine and specifically for the patient themselves. That's going to be a really cool advancement in this sort of cancer screening tech.
At the beginning of this, you said they found it kind of by accident, right?
Yeah.
So obviously they're collecting a lot of data. It's kind of a blood sample from that standpoint. Are they using any of that to accidentally find something else, or are they just kind of continue to hone in on? I assume they're keeping a lot of that data. They'll be able to mine it later for other
terabytes of data. I have no idea. They're probably taking up an entire server farm somewhere of data. They do have the ability to go back and look. One of the things that's interesting is every single case that they have where a positive shows up, the company follows it very closely. They work with that. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully, but they're on it, and they want to know, hey, have you found it? If you haven't found it, it's not like if we can't find it, we're just like, all right, well, everything's great. We're bringing that patient back in 3 months. I'm going to scan them again. I'm going to repeat the test in 6 months. And by the way, it's free, so that's nice. They don't make you pay for it. If it looks like a false negative, they will repeat it for free. But if you repeat it and the cancer signal gets stronger, man, you're definitely keep looking. If it goes away, the first test might have been wrong. The other possibility, we all have immune systems, right? And the thought is that we probably all have a cell somewhere that goes rogue on the daily, and your immune system just kills it. We're picking up cancer on a molecular level. There's always a possibility that you did have cancer and now you don't because your body got rid of it, which would be a good thing. But there is some concern. Are we creating like a whole new cadre of patients that are cancer survivors because they had a test that came back positive once and now it's negative? I don't know. Are you going to be able to get life insurance if you have a cancer test come back positive and then it's negative? But, now they're like, well, we don't believe the negative one. We think you're going to get pancreatic cancer and we're not going to insure you. I don't know. There's a bunch of unknowns. Honestly, I think it'll be not more than a year or two before anybody, trying to get a policy over a certain amount, they're just going to make them do one.
Sure.
Because if you're buying a $50 million life insurance policy, what's $950 to Lincoln Financial? Nothing. So, I think will probably happen sooner rather than later if I was to bet. Not for everybody, but for somebody that's looking to get a big policy. So, but apart from insurance abusing the tech, which why wouldn't they? As a physician, I'm just super excited that we have an ability now to plug this what was just a giant gaping hole in our ability to find 70% of the cancers that kill people. And if the other thing is, like, if you're only finding it in stage 4 and this guy was going to die anyway in 3 months, then maybe it's not such a great test. But you can find it in stage 1 and stage 2, which this can, because it's finding it on a molecular level. That is the difference between curing and not curing a cancer. So this was not my patient, but one of my friends who has a practice in Denver, 51-year-old lady, like I said, the test just came out. This happened last year. 51-year-old lady did the Gallery cancer screen, came back positive for ovarian, and they scanned her, and she had a tiny little tumor on her ovary, stage 1 ovarian cancer. Wow. That test saved that woman's life. She would have died.
Yeah.
When, I don't know, but she would have died sooner than she should have because she was 51 with an ovarian cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't take too many stories like that before you're like, this is maybe we should figure out a way to get this for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Random question. This may be a dumb one, but if someone has been diagnosed with a low-grade cancer already, would you still run that test on them? Or I guess maybe it depends on which kind. Like for prostate, you can already do the PSA, so maybe it doesn't make sense to do this one.
It's a really good question. So, there's a... First off, if somebody has had cancer and has been successfully treated for the cancer, then you can run the test on them, okay? The lab would say you should wait 3 years from the resolution of that cancer.
Okay.
You probably don't need to wait that long, but if you had, let's say you had lung cancer and you had a lobectomy, you should at least wait until you're healed up from that. You don't want to be picking up bits of dead cancer cell, that are floating around in the blood. Yeah. If you have somebody with prostate cancer is a great example, sort of a smoldering low-grade cancer that you're following, is probably not a great test to get because it's almost certain there's a decent chance it's going to pick up that cancer, okay? Right. And it's just going to tell us something that we already know. The flip side of that is that just because you have a prostate cancer doesn't mean you can't get another kind of cancer.
Yeah, that's
know. And so, we don't really have a good answer for that. Right now, what the lab says is don't order it on somebody that already has cancer. Okay. Because it's either going to come back and say this person has cancer, or it's not going to say that, and you're going to go, well, the lab's a piece of crap. Prostate cancer is another very interesting example. In many people, it's so slow growing, which is not a bad thing, but it's so slow growing that it doesn't shed a lot of DNA into the blood, and this test is actually particularly poor at picking up very slow growing low-grade prostate cancers. Okay. So it's not a great test for that. Now, will it pick up, an aggressive prostate cancer that's eating through the prostate capsule and going into your... Absolutely. But it's not the greatest test for that. It's not particularly great at finding cancers in the bladder or in the kidneys because most of those cancers shed their DNA into the urine and you just pee it out rather than going into the blood. Yeah. So they're working on a urine addition to it, but it's not great. It missed a patient of mine earlier this year with a superficial bladder cancer.
Okay.
We found it in a different way, but literally, actually, the patient was getting an MRI of their prostate because his PSA went up, and his prostate looked fine on the MRI, but they were like, there's something hanging out in his bladder there, and he ended up having a superficial bladder cancer. Okay. And his Gallery test was negative for both prostate cancer, and it was negative for a bladder cancer. It was superficial. He's fine. Yeah. So if it would have been a massively aggressive, invasive cancer, it probably would have picked it up, but it missed this one.
Interesting.
It's no good at picking up melanoma. Again, because melanoma grows superficially, and then by the time it gets in your blood, by definition, it's stage 4 and you're screwed. Yeah. So, don't stop looking at your skin, just because you're getting the test.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, that's very cool to hear about. Yeah. I was unaware of that. That's good to know. You gotta love technology and what it's doing to help us all out.
Well, and I think that one of the things that I love about my job in particular is that, we can identify some of these things that are, there's real science behind it, but it's gonna take a while before, this becomes standard of care. It might be 15 years. I don't know. Yeah. But if you wait for, standard of care to catch up with optimal care, people are going to die. Mm-hmm. And you have to be okay with that. And again, I want to be clear. It's not like we're out there doing every new, chasing every new shiny quarter. But when something comes along, like this was one of those things where like the 10 of us sat around and we're like, we got to do this. Yeah. This is cool, and it's expensive. But I've really found that I tell all my patients about it, and they can decide whether or not it's worth it. Right. I don't want to be the one who, because we have people that absolutely have that grand that don't want to do it, and we have people that they don't have the money, but they're going to cut something else out in order to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's good to know. I guess before we exit, I just want to say thank you for your personal support and primary physician support of the Heroes Foundation. We love partnering with you guys. We think it makes sense, and we're glad to have you on board.
we're happy to do it.
Thank you. Got anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Any questions for us?
No.
Okay, well, that was easy.
That was easy. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, thanks for coming
being here.
And thank all you guys for checking out this episode of the Summits Podcast. Again, from wherever you get your podcasts or on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for doing so. Hit that subscription button if you haven't done so. It's absolutely free. It won't even cost you $950, I promise. Just hit it up and hit that little notification bell so you can be alerted when new episodes drop like this one. And don't forget, guys, beat cancer.